Hello friends, I'm glad you're here. We're going to start in just a minute. I'm excited to share this story with you today, Enemy Pie. So we're going to wait till about 10:01 just to make sure all of our friends have a chance to jump on. All right, boys and girls, I'm so glad you're here. My St. Benedict friends, make sure you say hello in the comments. And to our new friends, please say hello in the comments. Love to know who's here enjoying this story. Today, I am reading Enemy Pie, a very old favorite of mine, by Derek Munson. So I'm so glad you're here to hear this story. And you can see the pie is for his very best enemy. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when I struck out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline and I wasn't even invited, but my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Oh boy, he's feeling not so friendly right now. Let's see what happens. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew how to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. And he pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said. Look at Dad's smile. I wonder what he's got up his sleeve. You may be wondering what's in enemy pie. I was wondering too. But Dad said the recipe was so secret, he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I'll tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kinds of things, disgusting things, would I put in a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him some earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing all morning. He gave it right back to me. I wonder what is in this very secret recipe. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck on the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me. And all the while, I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really good. As far as I could tell, it was coming from my kitchen. I was a bit confused. Think Dad has something up his sleeve? Let's find out. I went to ask Dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it at all, he said. I could tell he had made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put on his oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like a plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. Looks pretty good, huh? Let's see. He talked quietly. There's one part of enemy pie I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend the day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but it's the only way that enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross, and then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on the door. I wonder what's going to happen with this enemy. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door, looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll go ask my mom, he said. And he came back with his shoes in his hand, and his mom walked around the corner to say hello. You boys stay out of trouble, she said, smiling. He's being kind right now. Let's see what happens. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at the neighborhood girls, but we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch, and after lunch, we went over to my house. Looks like they're having fun together, doesn't it? It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course I couldn't tell Dad that, since he had worked so hard to make enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Boy, he is being kind right now. And you know, that's my favorite thing, boys and girls. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it, and it came right back to him. I threw it, and it went over my house and into the backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And if Jeremy wanted in, what do you think will happen? Can we go in it, he asked. I knew he was going to ask me that, but he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list. And enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me to throw a boomerang, and it did have me over for lunch, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off my wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, but he came out to get us. We tried to hide from him, but somehow he found us. Are you surprised he found them? He knew they were up in the treehouse. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite, too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched him cut the pie into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. What do you think, boys and girls? Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, said Jeremy, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pies like this. It was at this point I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat the enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. It's poisonous or something. Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching his mouth. He crumpled his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why has your dad already eaten half of it? I turned to look at my dad, and sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Look at Dad, he's enjoying it. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful. And that was all he said. I sat there watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, and I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out or if their breath turns bad. But I don't know if I'll ever get the answer, because I just lost my best enemy. The end. So, enemy pie. It's really not a bad treat. It's about bringing friends together. And this little boy and Jeremy became good friends. I'm going to show you boys and girls how to make a yummy, not enemy pie, just a yummy little cake that you can make for your family. We don't have to bake it, and it's best if it sits in the fridge. So let's go give it a try. So, before I get started with cooking, the first thing I need to do is wash my hands. So let me wash my hands, boys and girls. We always want to wash before we touch anything that people are going to eat. All right, so for this pie, boys and girls, we just need a few very simple ingredients. We need some graham crackers. We need some instant pudding. If you have the pudding that needs to be cooked, you can use that too. Any pudding's okay. And we need some tools. But we also need the milk to make the pudding. So I'm going to get that out of the refrigerator and some Cool Whip, because everything, they say, is better with a little Cool Whip on top. So the first thing we're going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to mix up the pudding. So I'm just using a small package because I'm only making a little one. You can make a bigger one, and you can use any kind of pudding that you like, friends. This is vanilla. And to make this pudding, you need 2 cups of milk. So I'm going to measure my milk. I need to see the measuring. So we're going to do 1 cup. And I'm going to pour it in. And I used a clear bowl, friends, so that you could watch me mix it up and watch the pudding go from a liquid to a yummy pudding, sort of solid. Put that in the sink. Now there are 2 tools that we could use. We can use a whisk, or I have this handy dandy egg beater that, believe it or not, was my grandmother's. So we can mix and mix and mix until this pudding gets a little bit thicker. And I'm going to switch over now to my whisk as we've got it mixed until it starts to thicken up a little bit. And boys and girls, it works pretty quickly. So we're mixing up the pudding. This is going to be the filling of our not enemy pie, because this is not enemy pie. This recipe is actually one of my grandfather's most favorite desserts, so I always think of him when we're having it, and that makes it extra special. You can see it's starting to thicken up a little bit. I'm going to let it sit for just a minute as we get the graham crackers laid out. So in my pan, I just have a regular old pan. I'm going to line the bottom with some graham crackers. So I'm going to take them out. And I did already open them up, boys and girls, before you joined me, just so we could be a little faster. If they don't fit, oh, it looks like they're going to fit pretty well. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of breaking to try to get them to fit just right. And it's okay that it's not perfect. I'm going to fill in a little bit on the sides here. All right, so I've lined my pan with some graham crackers, and I have some more graham crackers in here. And you can see, look at that, boys and girls, my pudding has thickened up pretty nicely. So I'm going to pour a layer of pudding right over my graham crackers. I'm going to spread it out. Oh, they're jumping up there. And this will be just a one-layer cake. Spread this out. Let's get the rest of this. Scrape it all out, all this yummy goodness. Mr. Farrand will be enjoying this not enemy pie today. Then, let me wipe this up. We're going to put another layer of graham crackers right on top. Oops. And it's okay if they've broken a little bit because we're going to cover all of this with some yummy Cool Whip. And if you let it sit in the refrigerator for a little while, it gets nice and soft and yummy. But you don't have to. You can eat it whenever you like. And then we're going to put some Cool Whip on top. Let me get another spatula. And I'm going to put some dollops on top. And then I'm going to spread them out. And I'm going to have to be a little gentle because it's slipping. So I might switch to a bigger spoon, friends. It's a little bit easier for me to spread. And this not enemy pie, friends, is for you to share with your family. And while we're social distancing, not with your friends, but with your family for now, because we want to be safe. All right, so we've done a good job spreading. What I would do now is put it in the refrigerator for a while so that it can get a little bit softer, but I'm going to show you what a piece would look like if we were to cut it. We have a plate, and hopefully it will cut nicely for you today. It's a little bit harder when the graham crackers are still a little crisp. Let's see if we can get this to scoop out a little bit. And I think this is going to be a challenge. Let me find a spatula to scoop it up. A nice little one here. So friends, there's some not enemy pie you can share with your friends. I hope you enjoyed today's story, and I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. for another story time. Bye, friends. Click share.